You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you here as the NFL season kicks off just hours from now as we tape this podcast on Thursday Night Football, Lions-Chiefs. But Colts fans have to wait just a little bit longer to the first full NFL Sunday of the year, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars 1 p.m. kickoff. If you're in central Indiana, you can watch that on Fox 59, 1 p.m., and if you have DirecTV, well, I hope you have rabbit ears right now, or knock on wood, mostly that the two sides can come together. Because Chap, as you tweeted out this week,
any inside information?
I do not have any inside information, but none. You tweeted out this week in reference to the Nick Bosa deal. Deadlines spur action, and this is a deadline for sure.
I've got rabbit ears, antenna, and they didn't work last time for the preseason game, and hopefully I'll get it fixed because that's some of us. I did call Uverse, and I got to cut in my rate because I don't get my two channels. But hopefully they'll get it solved because a lot of people don't have all the streaming. Right. I'm talking the hardline, fan base. So hopefully the people who have the money will figure out how to let us watch TV.
Right. I think a lot of people who listen to podcasts have an avenue to get this game. But in case you're out there and you're listening to us and you don't, I definitely wanted to get it out there and remind you, you don't want to be sitting in your room on Sunday, 1 o'clock, try to turn on the Colts game, and then remember, oh, shoot, this is still going on right now. So, hopefully, A, they work it out, and it's done, and it's a moot point, but B, I would right now still have a backup plan, because it's not. It hasn't been worked out here, if you're listening, of course, in central Indiana. But anyway, we'll talk Colts-Jaguars plenty. We've got injury updates, of course, chatting Anthony Richardson in his first NFL start. Let's start with what's been going on at headquarters this week. We've heard from Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson, a slew of players in the locker room. Today, Chap, significant news on this Thursday, which will be Shaquille Leonard's day speaking with the media throughout the year. But he has been cleared from concussion protocol. We expect to see the Maniac on the field here in Week 1 for the Colts.
Yeah, we talked to him, and we're in the part where we're trying to read between lines and body language. He's ready to go. And this would be a two-man podcast if looks could kill, because I asked Shaq, is there a concern over the concussions? He said no, and again, he could have killed me with the stare. But you got to ask. I mean, right. I'm more concerned with the concussions than I am the back. So it's 3 that we know of in his career, 2 in the last since October. Because remember when he broke his face? When
Zaire Franklin's head just
he also got a
his.
concussion, and we don't know. The first concussion was in 19, and he missed 3 games, including the upset in Arrowhead. Mm-hmm. And last year, the concussion, we don't know how long he would have been out because of the nose, broken nose, fractured nose, whatever it was. So it's a concern. It's always a concern. But and they need him to be as close to what he's been, because outside of DeForest Buckner, there's no Kenny Moore has been, but a playmaker. Mm-hmm. There's not, and he gives them that possibility, and that's what he was in the past. So hopefully he's back. He doesn't know if he'll be on a pitch count. I imagine he will be, because if nothing else, they want to get EJ Speed on the field. But it'll be good to see Shaq back.
Yeah, Matt, if you don't have a 10 to 15 sack guy coming off the edge, the best next thing you could have is a playmaker, whether that's as a safety or a linebacker, whoever it might be, that has a knack for taking the ball away, because that's what Shaquille Leonard has been to the Colts over the past couple of years, of them not having a steady guy that you can certainly rely on off the edge. I'm certainly not sleeping on what DeForest Buckner does from the inside, but there's a difference in the edge rusher, which you need edge. That's why Nick Bosa is making $30 million a year, franchise quarterback money right now. So that's my point, that Shaquille Leonard, he's been one of the most, if not the most important player on the Colts defense during his time here in Indy.
I mean, even when the Colts defense has given up lots of yards, and we've seen it time and time again, it seems like in that key moment of the game, he's the guy who is, causing a fumble, picking off a pass, something like that, and they just don't really have anybody on that defense that does that. So that is a role that he is well suited for in this defense. He's been the heart and soul of it, and so let's hope that he can come back and make some of those big plays that just games hinge on those big moments, and he's one of those guys who can step up and do them.
And that's one thing that really worked with Matt Eberflus's defense when Eberflus was here a couple years ago was the, quote, bend, don't break. And I know that people or even players or even coaches don't love that phrase because you'd rather not bend at all, but like just the more snaps you're on the field, the more opportunities you give your playmakers to make plays. It's common sense. So if you're going to, like, if you can't just stop the opponent, make sure they don't get the chunk plays, don't give them 14, 20, 25 yards at a time. If they work down the field 4, 6 yards at a time, that's just more opportunity. Your defense is going to get tired. Absolutely it will. But it does give your playmakers like a Leonard more opportunities to make those plays, get the ball back in those scenarios. So anyway,
I was just going to say, and it'd be interesting to see because we really have not seen how he'll be used in the Gus Bradley defense.
Gus Bradley's really, and I mentioned it to Gus, he's not had this kid in the defense. 3 games last year doesn't really equate to anything because everyone agrees that wasn't Shaquille Leonard last year out there for whatever it was, 74 snaps.
Yeah, he was extremely limited, whatever he did. So
and he got an interception.
He did, yeah. It was his first game back, wasn't it, that he picked the ball off? I'm pretty sure it was, if I remember correctly. So we'll see what he can do and how much, if he's on any pitch count in this game. I know the Colts want to work in E.J. Speed, who's also out of concussion protocol. It cleared earlier this week. So it'll be a mix of all those two and Zaire Franklin for sure at linebacker, just because whenever Speed was on the field last year, he was making plays, making good plays, making important plays for the team. So we'll see what happens with Shaq as kickoff comes this weekend. The other player that was listed on the Colts' first injury report of the week was running back Zack Moss, limited in participation with a forearm injury, and that was in reference to him breaking his arm in the preseason. Now, it was the first preseason game.
It was the first padded practice.
First padded practice that had happened that Moss broke his arm. But at that point, you saw the timetable for return from injury, and you thought that week 1's a possibility.
6 weeks,
exactly.
Said, yeah,
but I mean, you never know with injury time because I mean, Jonathan Taylor's supposed to be back in 4 to 6 weeks, and it's been.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
I had to say it. I had to say it. We don't have to say anything more about it. But Zack Moss will maybe be on the field this weekend, which would be great. Just giving them some more ammo at running back if we bring in the Jonathan Taylor situation, because he's not going to be out there. Obviously, you got Deion Jackson, you got Zack Moss maybe, and you got the rookie Evan Hall. It's kind of a 3-headed monster there at running back. The 3 guys you would expect to see time or see reps. Chap,
I could see them bring one of the players up from the practice squad.
I can too. Yeah,
just for bodies,
especially if Moss can't go, and then you have to.
Again, it's funny. We asked him about the injury. It was a broken forearm. And he was asked, well, at least it wasn't a hamstring, so couldn't you have kept your conditioning up? He said, boy, you'd think so. But then he said, no, when you're hurt and you're not out there, you lose your conditioning, your football conditioning pretty quickly.
Yeah. So,
and they since you already mentioned the name, ideally, you've got to feature back a Jonathan Taylor. But they don't. And who knows when he will be back. Until then, it's going to be by committee. I won't be surprised if there's another running back in here next week. You don't do it this week because veterans it's vested and their contracts are guaranteed. So a lot of teams will wait for week 2 to bring in veterans to where it's really a week to week. I'm not writing off Kareem Hunt. I'm just not.
He's still out there.
And they had James Robinson in last week, former Jaguar. But right now, this is who you got. And they've got, we'll get into this a little bit later, but they've got to get something from the running game. And I'm not saying from Richardson. They need to get something from the running backs.
Right.
They do. And to me, that's going to be the key to the game, one of the keys of the game, and how Richardson plays this year.
For the Jaguars, 2 players on their initial injury report of the week. Defensive end Antonio Johnson.
He's actually DB. I mistyped.
Golly.
That. Yeah.
Gee whiz.
Yep.
DB Antonio Johnson. And defensive end Tyler Lacey. So there we go. 2 players on the defensive side of the ball. If I'm not mistaken, they're both backups too. I don't think either of them are starters. So they're full unit of starters. Not expected to be missing this weekend as they take the field. For the Colts, the first unofficial depth chart of the regular season. I mean, we spent a whole podcast talking about the unofficial depth chart of the preseason, so you figure we have to touch on it here, and the regular season is out. Not a surprise to see Josh Downs listed as the starting slot receiver ahead of Isaiah McKenzie.
That's how they'd been using him.
Yep, we saw that throughout the preseason, throughout training camp, that he was out there. Maybe at the beginning of camp, it was very much a split, especially when Downs was trying to work his way back on the field with injury. But since he got healthy, and like a week after that, it was Josh Downs out there with that first unit. Amari Rodgers is listed as a fifth wide receiver, even though there are 4 receivers on the 53 right now. So he could be called up, I believe, to that roster.
It could be a holdover because at one point this depth chart also had a backup kicker listed, so it's possible somebody forgot to clear a field on the website.
That happens from time to time.
Just to be fair.
Yes, Matt knows well, the digital producer here at Fox 59, that sometimes a sentence is accidentally left out there that shouldn't be there. You just hope that it's not the sentence is not too controversial in one aspect or another. And anyway, we talked about the 3-headed monster at running back with Moss, Jackson, and Hall. No surprise to see Darrell Baker Jr., Dallas Flowers as your starting cornerbacks alongside Kenny Moore in the slot too. 10 defensive linemen, and they're going to need all the defensive linemen. They're all going to play. Maybe they keep one of them out or for just to get to 53, But Chap, in order to get pressure on any quarterback, but Trevor Lawrence for sure, you're going to need a unit that is fresh. You're going to need a unit that is rotating. That's what the best defensive lines in the NFL do. Is you need 8 strong guys to go in there, give your starters a spell, come in at the proper time, and get after the quarterback play after play.
And they probably have that. I mean, I've always been a Tyquan Lewis fan.
Likewise.
Is he a starter quality? Fringe, but he's such a quality rotational guy. Dio is going to be a backup again with Samson Ekuban.
Yes, Ekuban.
So you're going to need that other guy inside. Taven Bryan, I don't know who it might be, but I like the depth. I like the front seven. I really like the front seven, and that's really not knowing what you're going to get from Shaq. But again, one of the strengths of this team, while I question the pass rush, they're tough to run against. Grover Stewart is just good.
Oh, yeah.
He's just good. Pro Bowler, maybe. There's just so many that do more statistical
there's many to get more
things.
stats, and that's the problem.
But you look at guys, team-centric, he's just huge for this team. He and Buck are really quality nares, but they're going to need to carry the day. They can't get into track meets with these teams. So it's going to be on to this defense starting up front, because we'll get into it. I'm really nervous about the corners. I'm not sold on the secondary. And, we talked to Gus a couple times, and I've mentioned it. For a defense to be good, you need a pass rush complementing your corners. Right now, those are 2 major questions on this team.
Yeah, for sure. Arlington Hambright signed to the practice squad. The team had waived him to sign Jake Martin.
Cool name.
Arlington Hambright.
Love it.
The law firm of Arlington and Hambright is now on the practice squad.
Right.
That's because they signed pass rusher Jake Martin, waived by the Cowboys. So that's 2 former pass rushers from the Cowboys that are now on the Colts roster. Joined Isaiah Land, the former.
Wish I could have got Micah Parsons.
I know, right? Why it was just an accidental slip there.
Yeah,
from
really.
the
You know what?
Cowboys.
I think he was with the Texans.
Golly,
I was
Matt.
thinking of Isaiah Land.
Gee whiz.
Boy,
yes, you were thinking about
tell you,
Isaiah
that's what
Land.
happens when you
First
hurry.
game. It's first game.
It is, yes. We're still shaking off the preseason, and getting into regular season form here. But anyway, the Colts waived veteran offensive lineman Dan Skipper in a corresponding move as well. So there's that move with the roster this week. So that brings us to the Jaguars visiting Lucas Oil Stadium this weekend. Season opener. Colts have not won a season opener, guys, infamously since 2013. 9 games in a row. It has been 10 years since that opening week win.
Baby steps last year, though.
It was.
With a
Took
tie.
one step closer with a tie. They did. A game that they should have won if not for a missed field goal by a kicker who is our former producer Joe Hopkins' favorite. But sorry,
Lego
Joe.
Man.
Sorry, Hot Rod. Sorry, folks back home who are big fans of Rodrigo Blankenship. But it was there to be had.
Kevin Bowen had a great stat, and I'll trust him because he's really good at this, that of all the Colts on that roster in 2013, none are still in the NFL. That's how long ago it's been. And that's not like ancient.
Right.
10 years, you should have somebody hanging on
one or two,
a long
yeah,
snapper
exactly.
or whatever. But tells you how long it's been.
It has. It's been a very long time. And the Jaguars coming in widely considered favorites in the AFC South. They won it last year. It was a dramatic late season charge. They had 5 wins in a row to end the regular season. 2 of them came against the Tennessee Titans, who they chased down, who tumbled and stumbled and bumbled mightily to the finish last year for a slew of reasons, not the least of which were quarterback injury problems there in Tennessee. But nevertheless, Jaguars took advantage. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game in a dramatic comeback fashion. They were not blown out by any means by the Chiefs. They hung with them, at least, you could say. But you look back on what the Colts have seen. They've played the Jaguars during this 9-game non-winning streak. That was the 2020 year, the first Phillip Rivers game, where the Jaguars came back in the fourth quarter, beat them 27-20. The infamous Gardner Minshew game, and the infamous year where the Jaguars went 1-15. Their only win was against the Colts in Week 1. That's how bad the Colts have been in Week 1. They cannot even beat a team that lost all the other games they had that year. But it's been year after year. It's been time after time. It's been situation after situation. It's been teams in the AFC, the NFC. Doesn't matter. Colts have not been able to win home.
There's
overtime.
There's one common denominator.
What's that?
The Colts.
That's right.
That's the problem. It's funny. Stephen Holder asked Shane Steichen on Wednesday about, do you know how long it's been? And he said no. Well,
maybe he said. Well, he said no.
He knows.
Yes.
I just don't think. And the question would have been, well, have you addressed this with the team? Which Frank Reich would have, in some form or fashion. He wouldn't have said, hey, you bunch of lollygaggers, let's win an opening game. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure Shane Steichen is taking the approach. I wasn't here. We're not going to harp on as much as we harp on it because
because we were here.
It's 9 years, for crying out loud. You ought to fall into a ricocheted field goal or whatever. But I think they're really, really going to try to say this is the starting point. Moving forward, whether they win Sunday or not, I don't know. But I think they really want to say that wasn't us. Last year, that circus last year, a lot of these players were still here. I think I looked, there's 19 players on this roster that have never played for the Colts. That's a lot. 10 rookies. So it's one of those, but that's not us, and they want to build forward. So, but I think it's a good way to open the season at home with a division team, but I wish it was like Houston instead of Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's pretty good.
Yeah, and so we can get into Jacksonville a little bit and talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, and confirm that, yes, this is why they are one of the good teams in the AFC, and people picking them as flyers. It's probably one of the more popular flyer bets to win either the AFC, win the Super Bowl in Vegas. Not that I would know anything about that, of course. But
how many times I was talking to the Jacksonville people today? They're Jacksonville.com, they're Jaguars.com, and they said, "What's the outside view of Jacksonville?" I said, "Well, I sort of think they've got it right. They've got the quarterback, they've got the coach." I said, but you have to understand, this franchise has burned so many people so many times. Okay, this is the year, and then no. So, but I do think that with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, and they got a lot. We'll get it. They got skill players, and they got young premier or pressure guys on the outside on defense. I like this team.
Yeah, let's get into the Jaguars then. They, as I said, won a wild card game against the Chargers last year, coming back from a 27-0 halftime deficit where they were terrible in the first half. Brutal. It was awful football. And then the Chargers were just as terrible in the second half to allow them to come back like that and win the game in Charger fashion. Lost in the divisional round in Kansas City. Trevor Lawrence post-game said something to the extent of, this is the new standard. Like you've said, Chap, we've heard this in some sense from the Jaguars before, but this is a franchise that has lost double-digit games something like 10 of the last 12 years, something like that. So the times where in the past where you think they're taking the right steps, it would immediately go back. Like there was not building from one season to the other with this franchise at all. And that's what they're trying to do differently this year, is have some build from one season to the other. Keep momentum, gain momentum, go forward. And it unquestionably starts with the quarterback and the head coach, like you said, to have those two together. But in particularly the franchise quarterback, as Trevor Lawrence enters.
If you can have one or the other, you'll take the
I'll take the quarterback, and then you'll figure out the head coach later.
Yes. Not to diminish the head coach.
No.
Quarterbacks solve so many ails.
Yes, and there are the teams that can succeed without a franchise quarterback are few and far between. It might include the San Francisco 49ers, and after that lately. Yeah, exactly.
I want to see Brock Purdy.
Yes,
I just want to see it. But no, you're right.
Very interesting to watch them. But anyway, back to the Jaguars. As Trevor Lawrence last year, from November on, he had a very shaky start to the year. Just getting, and I think a lot of us, as we were entering last season, were questioning how good he was really going to be, because did he really waste an entire year under Urban Meyer? And it looked like
yes. And the answer is yes.
Yes, it was. And then it took 2 months to start the season, September and October, to really shake off and move forward and really find his stride under Doug Peterson, Press Taylor, and that entire unit down there, and Jim Bob Cooter as well, who is an assistant or in some capacity or an offensive analyst or whatever. I forget his exact title with the Jaguars before. But anyway, Lawrence, from November onward, in his last 9 games of the season, so he had 8 games that were in, then his last 9 games, he was among the best in the league. His quarterback rating was above 100. He threw for more than 2,000 yards. He threw for 15 touchdowns in those 9 games as opposed to just 2 interceptions. So that was pretty darn good. He got really efficient. He can run too. We've seen it before as well. Like he's a big, tall, lanky guy. So you look at him like, how mobile is this guy really? But he uses his length very well in the run game. Like, he moves quickly. He moves suddenly. And once he gets those long legs going, he moves fast because he moves fast and he has long legs and he runs. This is the dumbest thing I've ever said on this podcast. Like long legs, he moves quickly. Of course, he's going fast. So like Lawrence has proven, guys, that he's the guy that you build around. The Jaguars have tried to build around him, but he showed them last year, taking significant steps forward in his second year in the NFL, that they really have something they can build on here into year 3 under him.
Yeah, and again, it's all the years that they didn't have it right is because they thought they had the QB and they didn't. And that's just so detrimental to a team, to a franchise, because you're wasting 3 years, or at least 2, maybe 3 years to find out that he's not the guy. And then while you're doing that, the rosters are getting older. So, but I think this guy, and again, this isn't Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields or even Richardson on running, but if you lose containment and things are covered, he's going to get you the first down.
Yep.
And there's nothing more deflating to a defense than to have the perfect defense called and you lose track of the quarterback. So, and if you look around that offense, they've got 1,000-yard rusher, Calvin Ridley, who really people don't know what he is. I was talking to their Jacksonville writer down there. He might have gone off the reservation a bit, but he compared him to Marvin Harrison. And this was John Ozier, and he was here during the Marvin years, and he said, this guy, he just elevates everybody. And this is a group that they were pretty good last year, with Christian Kirk and all these guys. And so the one thing the Colts can't do is get into a track meet with these guys, and Lawrence is capable of staging a track meet.
Yeah, Matt, I would say that the Jaguars as a team look similar, building around a young franchise quarterback, as a couple of teams in the NFL have in recent years. The Bills and the Eagles, I'm referring to specifically, with Josh Allen, with Jalen Hurts, that in the 3rd year, they both took significant steps. Like, you saw potential in them in the 2nd year, and then Allen 2 years ago, his 3rd year, big step forward. Jalen Hurts last year's 3rd year, big step forward. And what they did was they added weapons around him.
Stephon Diggs,
A.J. Brown, and now you're getting Calvin Ridley. And what Ridley did 2 years ago in 2020, I guess 3 years ago now in 2020, was he had a 90-catch season for the Falcons, with Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. 1,300 plus yards, 9 touchdowns, but he really hasn't played much since because he was injured in 2021, and then he was suspended for all of last year due to the NFL's gambling policy. So like Chap said, there's a big unknown with Calvin Ridley, but also the potential and the expectations are obviously huge for him. And when you look at, like I said, what other NFL teams have done, this is kind of the path forward, or the what you would expect, the game plan for teams right now. They've seen other teams' success with this in the past, so that's what the Jaguars are trying to do right now.
Well, and yeah, I mean, on offense, like you guys have said, they've got some playmakers at the skill positions, which, oh my goodness, what would that be like?
That'd be nice.
You know, they've got some guys that can rush. They've just got playmakers all up and down that roster. So it really kind of scares me to think of what the Jags would have done last season if they would have had some competent stuff coaching-wise when Lawrence was a rookie, because it does feel like that was just kind of a wasted season for him there under Urban Meyer.
Yeah. So the question with the Jaguars offense comes down to their offensive line, 100%, like no doubt about it. And there are obvious issues on that line. We'll start at left tackle, where Cam Robinson is not going to play. He's been their left tackle for a couple years. He is suspended for the first 4 games of the season because of the NFL's substance abuse policy. So you're bringing in a guy, Walker Little, who started some games for them last year, but did not grade out overly well during that time because he's your backup tackle. And, well, he's still your backup tackle technically right now because Cam Robinson is number 1 there. They brought in Brandon Scherf as a guard last year to really be the veteran, anchor the interior of the line. He was not great. He had a subpar year, and the question for him becomes, is it because he's getting older, or is it because he had an abdomen injury that he was dealing with for the majority of the season? So he's going to come back this year, and he hopes to be better. But what is it? You don't know yet if it's the fact that he's just too old and he's over the hill, or if that really was an injury-plagued season that is going to affect him just the 1 year, and that he can get back to what was really a Pro Bowl, if not all-pro form that he had in Washington in as many years before. Right tackle, they lose their starting right tackle, Juwan Taylor. Kansas City signed him for a $20 million a year deal to protect the right side of Patrick Mahomes there. So they invested quite a bit of money in this guy. They thought he was pretty good, and he was pretty good for Jacksonville last year. So they drafted a guy, first-round tackle, out of Oklahoma, I think it was, to be their starting right tackle. So you have question at right tackle because it's a rookie. He's had a okay preseason, but he's a rookie. At left tackle, you've got a guy who was a backup last year, still a backup really this year. On the inside, the guy that you brought in, the veteran, to anchor everything is, well, is he too old, or was he just injured last year? So that's the question, Chap, is that, and this is, it doesn't matter how many weapons you have, and the Jaguars have, I think, as many that can stack up against teams throughout the league. Maybe Cincinnati, a top five weapons, quote unquote, unit. But if you don't have any time, then that kind of makes it a moot point. So that offensive line needs to answer its critics. Like ESPN's Mike Clay, I think, ranked them 31st in the NFL this preseason. They actually saw a picture of them on the sideline, like they had an offensive coach or something hanging out with them. They had like 31st on the back of the shirt or something like that. So they know, they know the expectations for them, or they know that it is where they are viewed in the league, and they have to answer the bell right here. It's the season begins.
And that's why we can argue how many strengths the Colts have. One is a defensive front, and that has got to step up. You've got to get outside pressure. Buck's going to be Buck. He's going to get you at the end of the season. He's going to have 8 or 9 sacks. Grover's going to be Grover. But how do you handle the outside pressure? Again, linebackers are going to be fine. But if a team has a weakness, you have got to exploit it. And a lot of times in the past, we haven't seen that. My biggest concern, as I've talked about pass rush and the corners, is I didn't notice a guy in camp as an outside pass rusher. In the past, with Justin Houston or even Ngakoue last year, you saw bursts. Didn't see that this year. You saw a flash or two from Dio. Maybe they just disguised everything. I mean, offensively, we didn't see anything. But this defense has got to carry the day until the offense gets its feet under it, which however long that's going to be.
Saying it's going to take them some time.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So, and it puts a lot of pressure on the defense. And then, again, regardless what the defensive front does, those corners for the Colts scare me. They just do. Dallas Flowers is a great story. That's fine. But on game day, he played 4 games last year at corner because they were hurt. They were banged up, and Darryl Baker. So that concerns me. And fortunately, that the Colts aren't facing quite the offensive powers this year that they did last year, which is a good thing. But when you face the top quarterbacks, and this guy is a top, I don't know, we'll say top 10 because he's still young. But this is the kind of quarterback that can really put the points up if you're not on point on defense.
Yeah, and I think Chappell alluded to it, Matt, is that I think edge pressure is going to be so key in this game as to how the Colts fare, because I think that Buck and Grover can do the job, especially Buck in the middle. But at the same time, if you don't contain on the edges, if you're not taking advantage of these two tackles that I just talked about that are very much questionable as we enter this season, then what's the point anyway? Because Trevor Lawrence very much has the ability to get out of the pocket, throw on the run. We've seen it against the Colts over the last couple years, him doing that. So I don't know who it's going to be. Is it going to be Samson Ebukam, who they brought in as a free agent? Is it going to be Kwity Paye, who the Colts would love for it to be Kwity Paye? They want him to be that guy on the edge.
He needs to have the year because they got the fifth-year option. They've not.
Yes.
They would need to exercise.
Like the question with Kwity, and I think has to be answered this year. Is he going to turn into somebody who's like a Justin Houston, or is he going to turn into someone who's like a Jappell Sheard, who is a very good player?
Which is not a bad thing.
No, not at all. But it's not Justin Houston who's getting 10 or 12 sacks a year, who is the NFL's all-time leader in safeties. If you'd ask me, who do you want on your team as a young player, either Jappell Sheard or Justin Houston, the answer is obvious. It's Justin Houston. Right. You want the guy who can get off the edge and get to the quarterback. Jappell Sheard was a tremendous edge setter. He was a great run defender. And Kwity Paye, I think, is approaching that level right now, but his sack numbers, his pressure numbers, his quarterback hit numbers have not been there. And if you draft a guy in the first round, that's what you certainly hope for, and that's what earns you that fifth-year option in your rookie deal. If Kwity doesn't approach that, then maybe they don't pick that up end of the year. But that we'll get to that later. So Matt, the question is, who's going to be off the edge? Is it Kwity? Is it Dio? Is it Tyquan? Is it Samson? Who's it going to be that can complement that interior pressure that we know Buckner can provide and keep Lawrence contained so that he doesn't get out and really kill you?
My money's on Kwity. I think he will have a good year this year. And I really do hope that we're going to see some of that in this first game. We saw a little bit here and there during the preseason from this unit, but again, what can you tell from the preseason, really?
They don't need Kwity to have a good year. They need Kwity to have a very good year. They really do. And that's what they banked on. Remember when they took these two guys in the first and second round, he and Dio? Well, now's the time. It just is. And they've not been a bust by any stretch.
Nope.
But when you take a pass rusher in round one, like you said, you want and you need more. And hopefully this is – and he's been bothered by, this injury, that injury.
Yeah, he's had some nagging stuff.
And maybe this is a year because I think he's shown things. Like you said, he's not the prototypical pass rusher. He's more, and if he's Jappell Sheard, that's great. But you need more.
Mm-hmm. One note on the offense before we move on from the Jaguars. They also re-signed their tight end, Evan Ingram, to a pretty big deal this offseason. So, I mean, we talk so much about their outside weapons, the guys like Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk, who they gave a massive contract to. Everyone's like, why are they giving Christian Kirk this contract? He's overpaid. We saw why.
I was one of the biggest critics of that.
Me too. We were here on this podcast, what are they doing?
For a guy that had 800 yards or 900 yards as a career.
And then he had 1,000 last year and was a big, big part of Trevor Lawrence really coming into his own in the second half of that season. The Jaguars knew what they were doing when a lot of people didn't. Credit to the Jaguars, and that's not something you've said often over the last 10 years in the NFL.
No, and that's kind of why the Jaguars kind of scare me a little bit in the division this year, is because they've actually done some things that have not backfired.
Right, totally. So yeah, that's the offense the Colts will have to face. How about the other side of the ball, the defense? The Jaguars actually bring back all 11 starters on their roster.
Rare.
From last year to this year, and that includes guys up front. They have playmakers on really every level. It's not a defense that has completely come together, but like we've said with Shaquille Leonard earlier in this podcast, having playmakers is the next best thing. If you have no consistency stopping the ball and no playmakers, then you're terrible. You're dead in the water. But if you can't stop the ball, at least have some playmakers that can get you the ball back. And last year they had 4 different guys with 3 interceptions. So they had multiple different players who could pick the ball off. They had, on the front line, you have Josh Allen on one edge, an outside linebacker. The other outside linebacker in their 3-4 system was Trayvon Walker, the rookie, who only had 3.5 sacks last year. Very similar to, even more so than how the Colts feel about Kwity Paye, Chap. They need Trayvon Walker to step up and have a big year this year so he can be really a 10-sack guy to pair with Josh Allen and make this defense more dangerous than it has been in recent years.
Yeah, it's kind of, that defense is kind of built like the Colts were with Freeney and Mathis. You know, they had some other good players, a few great players, I guess. But, boy, when you've got the edge pass rushers, whether you get sacks or not, get pressure. Get that quarterback to throw a half a second quicker or force the ball out. Anthony Richardson's that first quarter at Buffalo, the interception, it's because they took something away and he threw the ball when he shouldn't have or whatever, and that's what you want. Right. With a young quarterback, the best thing for a defense is to create indecision, and that's what Richardson's going to have to fight.
That next level linebackers, guys like Devin Lloyd, Foye Oluokun, which is in the all Mike Chappell. I can spell it, but I can't say it.
If I can spell it, we're good.
Exactly. But the last 2 years, he's racked up 376 tackles. Like, he had 190-plus 2 years ago with the Falcons. He had 180-plus last year with the Jaguars. Just a tackling machine. Absolutely a machine there.
And what was it? Zaire set the franchise record last year with 166, I think, so that puts that into context.
Yep, and there was a time when Zaire was kind of hanging pace with him early in the year, but then Foye was like, nope, see you later, goodbye. We're going to keep doing 13, 15 tackles
Sometimes
game.
We slough off sack totals because they're just 5 yards down.
Tackle totals, yes.
But still, that's an amazing total.
It's a heck of a total. Yeah, you're right. And Zaire and Bobby kind of split that last year, Okereke. Like, they would both go back and forth. That's why it wasn't always Zaire being the big one. But for the Jaguars, Oluokun is the guy there. And then in the secondary, they have some playmakers. Cornerback Tyson Campbell was ranked the 7th best Pro Football Focus corner last year. And safety Andre Sisco, I know they're high on Syracuse University. Shout out to the Orange, so I have to throw him there too. But like I said, they have guys they like. But overall last year, some stats were not great. It was the passing defense that was not the best for them because they didn't get as much pressure as they have had in years past. That Jaguars defensive line sometimes had been one of the better ones in the NFL. They had guys like Achilles Campbell there for a long time in the middle of that defense who was a really tough pass rusher, and then they added Josh Allen as well from the outside. So, like last year, Allen had only 7 sacks and Walker only had 3.5. Like, that's 10 total from the outside, which is Like, you hope that they get more along the lines of somewhere between 17 and 20 between them this coming year if you're the Jaguars, and bump those numbers up. And that will help out your pass defense, which was 30th in the NFL in defense adjusted value over average. And I know that Mike Chappell certainly knows what that is, but absolutely
OPS, it's like OPS. What's OPS?
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those added advanced metrics where you take like down and distance, you evaluate how the defense did, and then you compare it against how every other team in the league. It does. It hurts mine too, but it's a useful stat. It's not an all-encompassing stat. It's like 27-7, Chap. Throw a famous stat
Don't
out
mention
there.
The name. Don't
exactly.
mention the name.
I certainly won't. But it's a stat that tells part of the story and not the entire story for sure. So that's kind of a look at the Jaguars' defenses. In the past, you've been able to throw against them last year and run decently, but more so throw against them. And against the Colts, I mean that's the big question mark for them this year, Matt. Is how exactly are they going to throw the ball? It seems like the Jaguars' weakness lines up a little bit with the Colts' weakness at the same time because their passing game with a rookie quarterback who completed 55% of his passes in college and wide receivers that have not broached Pro Bowl capacity in the NFL so far. Like I said, the weakness kind of matches up with the weakness. So if you're the Jaguars defense, you probably feel better than you would if facing a team that had obviously a better, more reliable, more established passing offense.
Well, it's kind of funny that the offensive line is not necessarily, we don't know what we're going to get for Jacksonville, and so you're kind of looking at the Colts pass rush. Can they take advantage of that? And you're kind of looking at the Colts passing game's not. We don't really know what it is right now, and can the Jacksonville Jaguars kind of take advantage of that a little bit?
All eyes on Anthony Richardson this week. He will make his first NFL start, and Matt did some good research here to go back and recap the last 2 major rookie debuts for the Colts, Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And I thought it was funny how some of these stats were pretty similar.
Very close.
They're almost identical.
Yeah, I thought it was eerie.
That both of them, Peyton Manning started his career against Dan Marino in the Dolphins back in 1998. The Colts lost by 9 points, but Manning threw for 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and was sacked 4 times. Andrew Luck started his career against the Bears, Jay Cutler, in 2012. The Colts lost by 20 that year. Luck threw for 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and was sacked 3 times. So I guess Anthony Richardson, as he takes on Trevor Lawrence, the bar is 300 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. That's
I'd take that.
I would too. I would completely take that. You know, like you figure, especially in a game, if the one thing I think you don't want to do is you're looking at these stats with this year's Colts in particular, with Anthony Richardson in particular. You don't want to get down by 20 like Luck was to Jay Cutler.
Luck was 23 or 45. He doesn't need to throw 45
You don't
times.
need 40 attempts from Richardson.
Maybe in 2 games.
Ever's a good word.
Yes, ever. And if he throws 45 times over 2 weeks, I'd be more happy with that. But it like you don't want to put him in a situation that he's not as ready for yet. And that would be one of them. If you're behind by multiple touchdowns in the second half and you know you need to score points quickly and the defense knows you need to score points quickly, so Walker and Allen can pin their ears back off the edge, go after you, see what happens. And so that's, like I said, that's what you want to avoid. If Richardson throws for 300 yards and a touchdown, I would be stunned, absolutely stunned.
So would I.
I
would, yeah. Because I was talking to a couple guys in the newsroom about this. You know how Luck and Manning, there were some similarities, the yardage, the interceptions, all that stuff. But it's, Luck and Manning were still. Luck could move, but they were still pocket passers in many respects. You consider them to be prototypical pocket guys. Anthony Richardson's not. No. So it's an apples to oranges comparison a little bit with those two guys versus Richardson. Yeah.
So beside Anthony Richardson is going to be running back by committee. In my opinion, you throw the guy out there who can protect Richardson the most. So whoever gets whoever knows his responsibilities in pass protection the most, send him out there. I don't care if it's Jackson. I don't care if it's Moss. I don't care if it's the rookie, Evan Hall.
It's probably Evan Hall.
It might be. It very much might be Evan Hall. Throw him out there. Give him 60% of the snaps. Give the other two guys 20% of the snaps each, and call it a day out there. Because I want Richardson to be protected as much as possible. I think all three of those guys, with an emphasis on both Jackson and Hall, can catch the ball out of the backfield. Jackson caught 10 balls in one game last year
against Jacksonville.
I think it was Jacksonville in the home game against Jacksonville. And then that's what Hall did the best when he was at Northwestern. He was a really good receiver out of the backfield. So get a guy who can protect the quarterback. And all three of them running, I think, are very level. They're fine. They're fine. They appear to be NFL running backs. And
they're 7 yards.
Yeah, we don't even know all that much about Evan Hall yet. But the other two guys, they average 4 yards per carry.
What's going to be missing, obviously, is the home run.
Yeah, and that's what Taylor provided.
Taking that 7-yard run and turn it into a 60-yard run.
I think these guys, if there's 7 yards there, they're going to get maybe 8. Taylor gets you more, but that's the world they're in now. It's not going to change, maybe forever. So The problem is, in the difference in Manning and Luck in this is those two guys had pretty good players around them. Now, Luck's were rookies, T.Y. and the tight ends.
Did have Reggie Wayne, too.
Yeah, yes. And Vic Ballard, pretty good. I'd take Vic Ballard
over any of these running backs,
over any of these guys. But
Mississippi State, shout out to Chris Hagan.
I know. They've redone the hallway at the Colts complex, and they got big play moments, and they've got Vic Ballard's corkscrew run to the pylon against Tennessee. Yeah. Overtime, I think it was.
Yeah.
But it's just this is not the way you want your 21-year-old rookie to start his career, with just running backs that are just okay and 4 receivers on the roster, and you're not sure what you've got with the receivers. You think you know with Pittman. I was disappointed in Alec Pierce's preseason. I was.
How can you be anything else right now? He dropped the one big play that came to him.
The best throw any quarterback can make, and they dropped it. And it's not fair, but if they're going to take more shots downfield with this quarterback, if they take 7, you got to catch 4. You just have to.
Yep.
So just so many questions. The one question I probably don't have is the offensive line. I think it's going to play okay until an injury, and then we'll see. But it's just not ideal to have this quality of supporting cast skill players around the quarterback when all along they say we got to, I talked to Quentin Nelson. Well, we got to make sure we do our job so he's not having to do too much. Well, right now, he may have to do more than he's ready to do because of the people around him.
Yeah. Once there's an injury anywhere on this roster, I think all bets are off. Because
Except
we talked about this last week. Yeah.
I would probably feel better at quarterback going to Minshew, which is
no disrespect to Anthony Richardson,
which is crazy. But if you lose Bernhard Raimann, you're toast. You just are. And I'd say Buck inside, you might be able to get by a little bit because you got Tyquan and all those guys. But I'm really interested to see how Richardson plays. He's shown us, initially when you start checking things off, he's got the temperament. He does. He's got the upbringing. And going through hard times and this, that, and the other, but he has not seen. He's going to see things on Sunday that he's not seen yet, and he'll see things the next Sunday, because no one shows you much of anything in the preseason. Mm-hmm. So everything that he's prepared for, well, they're going to say, well, you're going to see 10 times more than that. And like I said, the biggest thing with a quarterback is indecision, and I think there's going to be questionable moments for him, and he's got to respond the right way.
And I think on the other side of the coin to that, Matt, is if there's things that he's never seen, there's absolutely going to be things the Jaguars have never seen with a new head coach and a new quarterback with such a unique skill set that Richardson has. Like as much as we have tapped the brakes, I think, throughout this offseason, training camp, preseason, said that it's going to take some time. There are going to be ups and downs. I think the ups are going to be I think there are going to be some thrilling moments for the Colts this year, because Richardson seems like the type of guy who can put those together. And we've seen glimpses of it even in the preseason. In that game against the Eagles, I know he's going up against the second unit for the Eagles defense, no doubt about it. But he shed a couple of tackles, a couple sacks. He threw one ball where he's being ripped to the ground. He barely made this first down on a run that he just slid in a way that reminded me of Lamar Jackson. Instead of going to the line, he just took
when
back
he should have gone out of bounds and saved his body, but no, he cut up.
So I think there's going to be a lot to watch that will, knock on wood, if guys stay healthy, and Shane Steichen is as effective as all Colts fans hope he is. And as
all Philadelphia fans
saw him to be.
Right.
This could be, at times, the highs could keep Colts fans, I think, through this season.
You hope the lows just aren't 4 interception lows.
Right, exactly.
We know I think he's going to make some big runs. He's going to throw a ball or two where you're going to go, oh my goodness, there's nobody else in the league that can do that.
Andrew Luck threw some bonehead throws, so I think you're going to go the other way.
Well, no, I was going to say he's going to do that. He's going to have that where he's going to make a couple throws. You're like, I don't know if anybody else in the league can do that. And then he's going to have a receiver 10 feet away from him, and he's going to throw it into the turf. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be like, or he's going to throw it in the coverage.
His hands.
5 yards in,
guys covered by 5 guys. We're going to squeeze it in there. There's no window, kid. You can't do that. We're going to have that plus and minus the whole year, I think.
Super young secondary. This is our last note before we get into keys to the game and our predictions. We've talked a lot about pass rush already. We've talked a bit about the offensive line. But I'll be intrigued to see, Chap, if there is a rotation in the secondary, because you got Darrell Baker Jr. and Dallas Flowers listed as your starters. I'm wondering if Juju Brents will see any play if he is returned from his hamstring injury that kept him out of the preseason.
So much time.
He missed so much. And Jalen Jones, I don't think it is rare to hear Chris Ballard sing the praises of people as much as he did Jalen Jones.
He was almost Chuck Pagano, Malik Hooker.
He was darn close. Effusive of his praise for those two young cornerbacks. So we will see Baker and Flowers to start it off. But will they rotate those guys in for a series or two somewhere to get them some play, get some tape with them?
Some they will, because again, Flowers and Baker aren't like, they're our guys. I mean, they're your guys because that's who you finished with.
Right.
And they played that in preseason. But, we all talked, they drafted Juju Brents to be their starter. But that the risk set him back in off-season workouts, and then that hamstrings are just tough.
Ask Jelani Woods.
Ask Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and if you're not careful, it goes from being 3 weeks to, half the season. Mm-hmm. But they've got to get Juju Brents on the field and Jalen Jones as well.
I'm really shocked that. Well, I mean, it's because of the injury, but I really was convinced going into after OTAs and all this. that Brents was going to be the day one starter.
Right.
But because of the setbacks and the injury, that's not going to be the
He
case.
got hamstring to open up camp, didn't he?
Yep. He did. You just couldn't elevate
No,
him there.
you couldn't.
That's
you
the
just
problem.
didn't have. You were not able to get him the reps and the activity that you needed in order to do that.
Like I compare it, like for a second I compare it to Josh Downs, because at the beginning he wasn't there either. Like, and you brought him in, you tried to work him in, but then immediately Brents was gone. Like, and Downs stayed in there, like in that time where you work him in with
Right.
Isaiah McKenzie, and then you make him the starter. Like, there was just never that next step. They never could
Right.
take that next
Right.
step with him. So does it happen throughout the year? Maybe it does. Maybe in week 4 or 5, you're talking about Juju Brents being out there alongside either Baker or Flowers as one of the starting cornerbacks if he stays healthy. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, Colts-Jaguars this weekend. We're going to do keys to the game. We're going to do our predictions for this week. I know that the Jaguars are favored. I think it's by like 5 or 6 points. And I'll look that up in a minute. But I'll start off with our keys to the game and predictions. I've alluded to this already. I think the key will be can the Colts get some kind of rush on Trevor Lawrence and really keep him in the pocket type of rush. So it's not just Buckner up the middle. This also has to go with the guys on the outside, whether it's Quiddy or Dio or Sampson or Tyquan, getting some edge pressure on this young quarterback who last year really took a significant leap forward, and the team has such high expectations for him this year as to be the guy that leads them into the future as the now perennial AFC South contenders, at least, and perhaps AFC contenders. In the AFC, you need a quarterback to contend because of how many there are out there, and the Jaguars believe, and they should believe, that they have it there in Trevor Lawrence. Can the Colts get the edge pressure with that unit? And take him down and keep him kind of contained, and that's what they did last year when it was here at home, when the game was here in Indianapolis. They had something like 4 or 5 sacks in that game, and I think both teams scored like 28, 34 points right around there. But like the offense matched it, but the Colts kept him from that last drive that he was going down the field with them.
Was that the Buck? Dio,
I think he was Buck and
sack?
Dio, yes, strip sack, and Dio I think fell on it if I remember correctly. I can't remember specifically, but yeah, that was the play that ended the game for them. So, couple of streaks kind of going against each other in this game. Colts haven't won in 9 straight season openers, but the Jaguars have lost 5 games in a row here in Indianapolis. 9 of their last 10. Something's got to give. I do not think it'll be the Colts streak. So I'm going to pick the Jaguars here in week 1. I'm going to go 27-17. I think that Anthony Richardson has a touchdown, just like Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck did in their debuts. Might even have a rushing touchdown. He could have 2 touchdowns if.
Nice prop bet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but if you're interested in those types of things, but I think the Jaguars are too much. I think they start the year exactly how they expect to. On the road as a team that's turning the corner in the division in franchise history, perhaps, and they take care of business here in week 1. Matt, we'll go to you next. Chap, you can wrap us up. I'm going to look up and see exactly what the line is for this game, but Matt, go ahead.
Well, my heart wants to say that the Colts are going to win 24-21 with a Matt Gay field goal at the end, but I think what's going to happen is the Colts will get kind of an early lead on this one. They're going to, because the Jaguars don't know exactly what's going to hit them with Anthony Richardson, they're going to get a couple of big plays early, but I think they're going to fade down the end, and I think we're probably looking at something like 28-17, something along those lines. Jaguars.
It is a 5-point line right now, and the over-under is 45.5. So they're expecting something like a 25-20 ball game is what Vegas is saying. So anyway, Chap, your thoughts.
I'm expecting like 31-17 Jacksonville. I think this team comes out and plays well early, but then I until I'm going to be a doubter until I see the corners play well consistently, because this is one where your corners can play well for 45 or 50 plays, and those 5 plays just kill you. So, but I think they'll play well. They're going to be hyped. I think the best prop bet to put money on is who will be the Colts' leading rusher, Richardson or the field.
Yeah.
And it'd be kind of cool if he's their leading rusher. Probably wouldn't be best for the team unless he's up 150 yards.
Right, he breaks a couple big ones.
And again, it's just so crazy. And we asked Shane Steichen this about all the preparation you've done. What do you expect? And he said the unknown. coaches try to cover everything they can. And I remember talking to Tony Dungy, his first year as a coach. Wasn't here, it was in Tampa. He said they thought they had everything covered. And then they went to Miami, and they had the baseball field, and it rained. So they had a big mess in the middle of the field. And he said, didn't expect that. So, and again, keep in mind, this kid's 21. He's the third youngest quarterback to start in league history, and the youngest Colt. So they'll be good, they'll be bad, but I just think he won't be able to make enough plays or the people around him. 31-17, and we're going to tell so much about this team in week 2 against Houston, but we'll get to that next week.
I mean, that's the thing. It's the great unknown. I do not know. Not that I knew last year what to expect, but I had some expectation for the team. This year, I have no idea what's going on coming into the first game of the year.
All you want to see, we'll talk about it all year long. All you want to see is growth from the quarterback. If you see him, you don't want him to go 3-14 or whatever the math is. You want to see the quarterback grow to some level every week, because that gives you hope that he's the right guy. And
we'll see what that baseline is over these first couple weeks of the season to grow from. Like whatever it is in week 1, it's hard to just take 1 week, at a time. Say grow from that week. It's going to be the first month of the season, and say, hey, December needs to be better.
What you hope for is he is the right guy, and then it's going to be Anthony Richardson and Trevor Lawrence twice a year for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool stuff.
Maybe C.J. Stroud as well. Maybe Will Levis if he's the guy there.
Right.
in
that would be wild, wouldn't it?
Seriously, that would be insane if it's just 3 guys and then Trevor Lawrence. That would be cool. Really cool. That's what all the teams hope for right now. No doubt about it. Colts-Jaguars, Sunday afternoon, 1 p.m. kickoff, broadcast in Central Indiana on Fox 59. Make sure you get the opportunity to watch that game. If you're not going to be there, exactly. Have a plan to watch that game, if you know what I'm talking about. We appreciate you all listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for news and notes throughout the rest of this week, which we'll certainly tweet out, whether it's injury updates, roster updates, whatever's going down. When Jonathan Taylor doesn't sign or does sign on Saturday, and he's out there on the field Sunday running for 150 yards,
he's on PUP 4 games.
That's true. That's a good point. So that's
settle down.
Yeah, not happening.
I know. All right. That's it. That's all we have to say. We'll see you next week. Colts Blue Zone Podcast.